So thank you all for attending the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, December 17th, 2025. We will get started here in just a second. As for everybody on the Front Range anyway, there is a high wind warning today. Happy Wednesday. Get it? So we are, if Donnie and Heather and I are working on have backup plans. I have enough computer and I can hotspot off my phone, but if I lose power, uh, Donnie or Heather will pick up and keep going. And then I'll join back whenever I can. But we should be good. The winds are not supposed to be real bad until noon or so, so we'll see how that goes. We do have a heavy agenda today. It's a 91 slide deck uh, to get through. So we're going to rock and roll through this. We have a couple of very important items that we want to get to today and kind of discuss. And so with that, I'll jump over to sharing my screen and we'll get started. All right, so everybody should be able to see my screen. Some ground rules for the public. We appreciate your participation in this process. We recommend typing your questions into the chat. And like I said, I've got several co-hosts helping me out here. Michelle will also help out with letting me know if there's hands that go up or questions in the chat that we need to talk about. But the priority will be given to the TAC members, as the Technical Advisory Committee is the group that we need to hear from. But again, if you have any questions, don't be bashful. We would like to hear them. Written comments, if you have any, and this goes for TAC and the public members, can be sent to me at sam.albrecht@state.co.us. Resources for everybody. The slides and this recording will be posted to our TAC website, which is at the bottom of this list. Senate Bill 25-002 is the primary thing that we are discussing, and the implementation of that bill. We always base our administrative rules on statute, and that's 2432, 3301 to 3329. There's actually a link to the red lines. A link to the current administrative rules, and then a link to our building codes and standards website and the TAC website. So those are the resources for folks if they ever want to go back and check. With that, Senate Bill 25-002 has a number of different sections that we are integrating into our administrative rules. The responsibility and accountability stuff will affect the administrative rules in chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Builder contractor registration and education is going to be in its own section. That's for building contractors. And then we will also look at the third-party agency plan review and audit processes for seller contracts and down payments, and then regional design criteria. We are currently planning to put the regional design criteria that we're working on into its own appendix. So it can be a reference for the manufacturers, the third-party agencies, and others that may want to take a look at that. So I kind of we sent out a red line to the TAC member for this meeting. I just want to lay some groundwork. We're trying to push forward with as much as we can, or almost everything, other than the regional design criteria table, as quickly as we can, so that we can spend our time in January, February, and March as necessary, and to go through those tables and make sure that they are what we need to recommend.
It's going to be like 50% of their job. Guys,
Nate, thanks for muting. So that's the intent, is to get through all this other stuff before the regional design criteria deep dive discussions. And to do that, what we would like to do is go through those red lines that we sent out and have some good discussion on this, and then preliminarily finalize those at the next meeting. And then we want to reach out to the rest of the state interested parties and have a meeting with interested parties just on the rule changes. So chapter 1, no major changes in chapter 1. Codes and standards, we want to add we've added an accessibility paragraph to the IBC. We want to talk about we recommending adding the wildfire resiliency code, the map, and any local maps approved by the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board, and then go ahead and add the 2019 ICC G5 container standard. Chapter 3, fees. There's a lot of changes in that and a lot of updates in that. So I want to make sure we'll go through those. Because of the ways 002 is adding more on our plate, and it says that we can make those fee changes, we're going to be presenting those as part of the rule change. Manufacturers, in the manufacturer chapter, which was chapter 4, we are going to move all the third-party agency stuff over to its new chapter. We want to accommodate the regional design criteria zones. We want to remove the 3-year registration, and we want to accommodate the third-party agency final plan approval. Chapter 5 is that new chapter that we have talked about. That will be the eligibility, registration, and audits. And then chapter 6 is for the building contractors. That would be the registration, the responsibilities, and the education pieces of that. And then we briefly discussed a couple of new chapters, and we included them in this red line for discussion. One is on chapter 7, which is local governments, right? The local government chapter, I really want my 4 building departments, CBOs, to take a look at that and see what they think. We certainly can't penalize or require registration or do any of that stuff on local governments. This is, as we discussed in the last meeting, kind of an info in our administrative rules on what local governments can and can't do with respect to our statute. And so we want it to be useful to all the local governments. So we would like to get more input on that, but we did throw some draft language out there. Chapter 8 is our other state agency partners. The responsibilities and coordination there. That's a new chapter. We will set up meetings with Fire Prevention and Control and DORA to have some further discussion, but those that are representing electrical and plumbing for sure, and wildland fire, if you guys, and resiliency, I guess too, if you guys could take a look at that section, the new chapter 8, and see if you think it's comprehensive enough or beneficial, or think things should be added with respect to factory built structures in our statute, that would help us out too. Chapter 9, no sellers, no major change there. Chapter 10, installers, we're doing the rulemaking 1 over. That takes care of the business entity installers that was called out in the legislation. And then the foundations, chapter 11 and 12, just get renumbered. No major changes there, although we will clean up numbering and language to make it a more comprehensive and coherent document throughout. So those are the summary of changes. Are there any major questions on this? And you know, I have no concerns if we want to change the numbers of the chapters, but that's just kind of the ways we thought them up is how we laid them out. We think enforcement should be At the end, we think that Chapter 1, which is the definitions, and Chapter 2, which is the building codes, and Chapter 3, which is the fees, should probably stay in that order for sure. So I'll pause for just a second, see if anybody wants to raise their hand or has a comment. Otherwise, we're going to dive into it. All right. So in Chapter 2, what we looked at doing was adding Chapter 11 accessibility to that, accessibility must comply with one of the two most recent versions of the IBC. That is based on the bill that passed last year for accessibility. And then we added the G5 guideline there. These we've talked about before. Wildfire Resiliency Code Map for the purpose of establishing minimum requirements for construction in the wildland urban interface areas. And we'll link the code in the map. And then we added a subparagraph here saying that local maps approved by the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code Board would be applicable to construction standards.
I was gonna say there's a lot to call, so.
Okay. Rule 3, lots of changes in Rule 3. We want to remove the 3-year registration. If you remember, the reason we put in the 3-year registration was to allow plans to have a longer life. And we've covered that in another area. And then we add an inspection agency registration, and we take out the inspection agency registration because that now goes to the third-party agency chapter. And then we had a 3-year that's $450 for independent inspector. We just made that an annual fee of $200 and specify that late registration fees applies when over 30 days. Now the registration fees did change some also. We're recommending to the TAC to add a third-party agency registration. There will be a contractor registration. Again, that's for areas of the state where contractors are working on factory-built structures that do not have a local licensing requirement. Statute now gives us that responsibility. A plan filing and screening fees, and we can talk about that a little bit when we get down to the there's changes in the manufacturer section for that. We still are going to require that every plan, in order to create an asset in Salesforce, that the plan be filed so that we have a record of which plan goes with which address. This does not bypass the third-party agency approval of the plans to continue to start construction. And then we may have included screening fees in there, especially for the first year or so. We want to take a real hard look. We heard some concern from the building officials that with these regional design criteria, they would like to know that we have looked at the new regional design criteria to make sure that it is in alignment with where that unit is going. So there will be a screening of the fees of the plans that are filed by address. And then complaint inspections, we've talked about this before. If a correction notice is issued, that the complaint inspection fee would go to the manufacturer, the installer, or both. If there's corrections noted, a correction notice generated on a deficiency or defect. Audit fees, we are going to get serious on auditing manufacturers' plans, the documentation that comes with the registration for manufacturers, third-party agencies also, inspection and documentation, sellers documentation, and installers documentation. And that will include the financial surety documents if manufacturers are selling directly to the consumer. We'll make sure that all those documents, and especially installers, to make sure, and installers, that the contracts contain the language that is required in statute and required in our rules. So we will start doing those. We thought those fees were very reasonable to get started with. So, any broad discussion on fees before I jump into manufacturers? Okay. Rule 4, manufacturers. We deleted the 3-year registration, but plans are approved until a code or standard change. So we will make sure we notice folks if we do a code or standard change, it has to go through this body to do it. It has to have a public meeting on that. But the whole intent of the regional design standards was to allow units to be produced for multiple areas. And we really think that by tying it to design and code changes, that it makes it a little easier for the manufacturers to have an approved set of plans that they can use in other locations and not expire the plans every year like was done in the past. Plans must use the regional design criteria zones that we come up with. That is, and like we talked about in a lot of previous meetings, with the design criteria that we have laid out, zones that we have laid out, and there will be a home for everybody. If you remember, Region 5 or Zone 5 may have site specific or extreme, take into account extreme conditions and wind, snow, or other specific geographic requirements. So that is going to be, and we'll make that a requirement on the plan documents on exactly, and require that the plan set has the region that it is going for each of the design criteria. An approved plan must be submitted for each asset. I mentioned that when we talked about fees. All third-party agency was moved to Chapter 5, so there's a lot of red lines, deletions in the draft rules that were sent out, and that just is in order to move those to its own chapter. And then we're adding an audit section for manufacturers also. Now, the audit section, I will say, for all the different entities, the audit section and the procedures with that will be published. We're still working on those. We hope to have those to roll out for discussion at the next meeting on what the audit plan will be for plan reviews and documentation reviews. We're going to call them registered third-party agencies. We had some initial discussion on whether it was authorized, approved, or the recommendation we're going with right now is to add registered before every reference to a third-party agency. And then this is the big one, 4.4. Upon the manufacturer's receipt of the approved manual, a registered third-party agency may proceed with plan review and approval. This is just where we took out. Now, here's where I'm going to go a little faster. If you have notes on anything that you reviewed prior to the meeting that you want to stop and discuss, let me know. This one just basically takes out the 3-year registration. This just reiterates that manufacturers are required to have Division of Housing approval of their registered third-party agency. And we actually down here in 4.9 say registrations will, this is a we've added this to every section of registrations, and that is registrations will remain active if the required documents are submitted to the division by the registration expiration date. We don't want to be the holdup and on your registration if we have a delay or a staffing issue where we can't get to them in the timely manner. So we will continue to allow you to be registered until we have a chance to review those documents. Certifications will remain active if required documents are submitted to the division by the certification expiration date. That goes along with the registration expiration date change that we just made above. This starts taking out some of the plan review and life safety corrections done and notification back to the manufacturer, third-party agencies information. And then in 418, all factory, we're going, like I said, we're going to put the design criteria regions into Appendix A, and that they will be built to that. And the construction plans will clearly delineate the regional building design criteria. Approved plans are considered approved to the division amends Chapter 2 Codes and Standards. And I might actually need to change that division amends Chapter 2 to rulemaking or the State Housing Board amends Chapter 2 through a rulemaking process, because we can't, the division cannot amend those rules. Now we start talking about audits. Manufacturers may be audited per procedures established by the division. So I want to stop here for just a second and discuss this. So what I would like to do is recommend to the TAC that we take the audit details out and move them into a separate document where we have the flexibility at the division level to make changes in the frequency or make changes in the audit process and take that outside of the administrative rules. If that is a concern for anybody, or if the manufacturers have seen better models in other states, then let me know. If it's a concern, we could certainly put in what our minimum audit procedures are, subject to division increases as necessary to ensure quality control and life safety issues. We could come up with some wording to change that a little bit. But what I would like to do is have the procedures set out separately for manufactured in a separate document, very similar to our MHIP for installation. That's a separate document that we control on our audit procedures. Any questions, concerns, thoughts? Okay. And then, of course, if we find any issues in an audit, then the manufacturers will have 30, and all the others, registered organization will have 30 calendar days to become compliant. All right. That's the big changes in manufacturers, the Chapter 4. Okay. Rule 5, Chapter 5 of the rule is third-party agencies. We basically took the registration requirements out of the Chapter 4 manufacturer requirements for third-party agencies and carried those over to its own chapter. So the registration requirements for third-party agencies, they must select whether they want to do in-plant certification, plan review, and on-site inspections, right? OC. And that can be, and then there will be one registration per factory location. We've always had that. That's no change. One registration per plan review team. We will work with the third-party agencies on how that. What we did not want to do is limit it to a specific plan review for a specific plant, because we know that there are third-party agencies that have a more centralized plan review team, and so we want to make sure that we accommodate that. And then on-site inspections, the same way, one registration per inspection team. And then, of course, audits there too. And then we're trying to incorporate as much of ICC MBI standard 1205 as possible. Third-party agencies may, we've always had this, may consist of states. We have an MOU with Nebraska, for example, local governments for the OC inspections, and then firms must be listed with the National Listing Agency. We then further go on to line out that the third-party agency may elect to perform the following functions if registered with the division. In-plant construction inspections by states and firms, final construction plan and approval, states and firms, on-site construction inspections, firms and local governments. Then we go into the details on the registration process and what we need for each for the third-party agency registration. It's a rather long list, but it is primarily just what was already in the old manufacturers chapter. We talked about independence of third-party agencies at some point in time. This way back when we first started talking, but there is a statement that third-party agencies must declare that they're independent and that there's no conflict of interest. Again, just more of the details on registration. And then again, we added registrations will remain active if required documents are submitted to the division by the registration expiration date. Then we go into what other states can do if they want to provide third-party agency services. And then this one just talks about where third-party agency finds that a manufacturer is unwilling or unable to conform, then they need to let us know. Again, just movement from chapter 4 to chapter 5. I know I'm scrolling through these slides fairly quickly, but we did send them out in advance. If you want to, and I'll just caveat that if you want to go through them again in detail and send us comments just as quickly as you can, we can certainly address them at the next meeting. And then the audit of the third-party agency, that's a new section there. Any question on the third-party agency section? The new chapter 5 of the rules. Okay, rule 6 is the building contractors. Chapter 6 is building contractors. We talk a little bit about scope, the registration requirements, if not licensed by the local jurisdiction, and that the division registration will be statewide, but does not supersede local jurisdiction registration. And then responsibilities and education. So building contractors as defined in section 30-11-125-1A of the Colorado Revised Statute, who's developing an installation site or which performs on-site construction work of a factory-built structure is required to register with the division unless they're already licensed by a local government where the factory-built structure work is being performed. And then the registration will be considered a statewide registration that does not apply in a jurisdiction, but does not apply in a jurisdiction that requires the building contractor to be licensed in order to operate there. We're throwing this out for input also on proof of general liability insurance, a minimum bond, names of principals of the company, proof of factory-built structure education provided by or through the Division of Housing, and we probably need to add here, or other approved education providers, and certificate of good standing from the Colorado Secretary of State. Pretty similar to what we learned from finding how the local jurisdictions are doing their contractor licensing. And then 6.4 is the contractor education requirement that will be required of all general contractors working on factory-built structures, whether or not they are licensed by the state or registered with the state or licensed by a local jurisdiction. All contractors will have to take this education. Now, the responsibility of that, we tried to talk through that a little bit. Building contractors may be responsible for the following activities. And then who's going to be doing that? Inspection will be the local governments, except in areas of the state where there's not a building department, right? Then we'll pick that up. On-site construction work, the registered building contract, and the manufacturer responsible for any corrective actions identified by the division necessary to complete the unit. I know we have had a lot of discussions that different states do this different ways. Some say once the unit leaves the factory, it is complete from their thought process. Colorado requires that we look at the completion of the unit as a dwelling or as a completed structure or as a module as part of a structure. And that responsibility is going to remain with the manufacturer. And then permission for utility connections and other connections to infrastructure that may require inspections, the responsibility of the local jurisdiction of the Department of Regulatory Agencies. Now, we do have a couple placeholders in here. One is the building contractor education requirements, which we are working on, and then what the renewal process will look like. Does it also require updated continuing education, or do we put so just the renewal of the financial surety documents? So we're going to work on that and continue to and we'll present that to you guys hopefully at the next meeting. Any thoughts or discussions? Tim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. Are you going to be putting in anything for insurance, like liability or workman's comp? I know most jurisdictions, mine does require at least that at a minimum, just for protection of the homeowners. But are you considering that? Oh, okay. Never
So
mind.
we got $1 million here for general liability. I don't know that we put in workers' comp. I guess we could, but
No, this is good.
okay. Thanks, Tim. Any of the other thoughts? Okay. Allie, we're going to follow up with you a little later and see what you think of this.
Definitely. The education part is going to be the important one because I don't know if a lot of people will know that until they're ready to go and dive into this kind of work. But yeah.
Okay. Local governments. This is that new chapter we talked about a little bit last week, and we got some indication that it might not be a bad idea. And so we put in some language for local governments. Local governments perform the following functions: installation inspections and on-site completion inspections by becoming a participating jurisdiction as defined in Rule 1.23. Local governments may not charge the manufacturer for plan review time or services related to the construction standards of the unit. Local governments may charge a plan review fee for permit review and permits and non-unit structures, whether attached to or separate from the units. These include structures such as porches, garages, basements, stairwells, defensible space, etc. This is something that we've heard from occasionally from manufacturers with local jurisdictions charging full plan review fees. And they have been asked to pay twice for what we are responsible for doing here at the state. So that is one. And then local governments may not require a factory built structure to be built to construction code or design standard higher than the construction codes and standards approved by the division. And local governments will not be charged any registration fees or insignia fees to work with us. So any thoughts or discussion on, I think that might be all in local governments. Yep, that's all in local governments. Short, simple, but to the point for clarity.
Hey, Sam, is there, it's probably in a different section, is there something that talks about local governments being able to charge inspection fees for OC inspections?
We need to add that. That is a good point. Actually, yeah, so I need to add that. I'll make a note on our side that we add another one for that. Thank you, Don. Good point. Any other thoughts? Okay. Other Colorado state agencies? Kind of the
Sam, I'm sorry. I'm super sorry.
Tracy. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, I was trying to unmute. I apologize. Could
No.
you go back? Yes, thank you. So it says there that local governments may not require a factory built structure to be built to construction code or design standard higher than the construction codes and standards approved by the division. What does that mean? Like, does that mean a factory built structure, let's say it's going to go into a location where maybe their only requirements, because I actually have a situation like this, are only ANSI 119.5 in order to be able to place it on land that just happens to be approved through their zoning and through their area where they're putting it. Is that what that means? That it does not require it to be to the IRC construction codes if the local jurisdiction is only requiring, let's say, ANSI, for example?
So right now, for anything that is being built as an RV and being built to the ANSI codes does not go through our program.
So it just remains separate and, okay, all right. So that's because ANSI is basically considered a RV park model, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay,
So
okay.
if you want to go through our program and build an IRC unit,
Yeah,
and we're on the 21 code set, they can't
Yeah.
make you build to the 24 code set.
I see.
They can't make you build to a 24 or soon a 27 energy code level. They can't require an upgrade from you.
Okay, one more question.
The local
What-
governments may ask, we've heard of situations where they have said that, yeah, we realize you're on 21, but would you build it to 24? And then the manufacturer has the right to say, no, I can't do that. You know, I'm
Okay.
21 code set.
What about the other way around? Let's say you want to build it to, let's say, the state, tiny home program, for example, factory built structures. But their requirements are less. But the reason why you want to build it to that is so that way the customer has flexibility in the future. Does that make sense? Like, I may be putting this tiny home on a piece of land that really only requires it to be, let's say, an RV park model, but I want to build it to Colorado State because there's a good chance they'll probably move it and put it on their own piece of land one day, which at that point would require it to be state certified. So is there any problems going that way?
No, because our statute says the local governments cannot refuse a
Higher
HUD code home
standard?
or a modular home or a tiny home approved by the state.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to side rail
No,
off or anything.
it's a really good discussion. And, one of the things that we may see is manufacturers that want to say, hey, can I, and then we've always worked with those that want to build a higher code set. Let's just say they, a manufacturer wants to build to 24, right? We consider that to be, we would review it for the 24 code set and make sure that it exceeds the our 21 minimums, and then it should be good to go.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. Bonnie, I saw your hand come up.
Hi. Just wondering if this supersedes any local stretch codes, land use provisions for design standards. I'm from City of Aspen, and we have a lot of those types of local regulations.
So it's a really good question, Bonnie. As I was mentioning, the local jurisdictions cannot refuse a state-approved product that's gone through our program. But we have seen where, for example, a jurisdiction will, like Tracy was saying, was accepting park models and giving them COs. That's up to them, but they're not going through our program. They're not getting our insignias, and they don't have the guarantee from the state that they're built to as a dwelling. Does that make sense?
It does. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks for joining. Wayne, I think you were next.
Yeah. So I guess I'm particularly looking at 7.3, but Donnie, I think this is some of the stuff that we've been discussing as part of our one-on-ones relative to how does this get addressed if there's a local, right, issue relative to maybe the site, right? Maybe it's lack of water or lack of fire department access. How does that get addressed relative to the codes and standards that are adopted by the division that might require, in order to establish compliance, that might require something that supersedes code? Are we thinking this potentially restricts that?
No, Wayne, I don't think that restricts that, and I'll let Donnie jump in here too, because I think we're addressing the question to him. But the way I see it is that the things that you mentioned are permit specific.
Okay.
And the permit, if there's a requirement for a cistern or a requirement for some other water source for fire suppression, that would come from the local jurisdiction, right? Tim?
Right. I guess I was just saying that could potentially prompt something that is in excess of what is required by code. Right. Because here's the scenario that we deal with pretty frequently, right? Is that we have a building or a site that either doesn't have the requisite fire flow that's required by IFC Appendix B and Appendix C, right?
Yep.
So an offset for that is to sprinkler a building that otherwise wouldn't be required to be sprinklered. It's still a win for both. However, it's technically something that supersedes what would otherwise be required by the base code as an alternative or equivalency to something else that would not be that couldn't meet prescriptive compliance.
Can I jump in?
Donnie,
Yeah,
go
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think what we'll need to do is maybe take a look at 7.3 and clarify the difference between the construction code and design criteria, because I think what you're talking about is more the design criteria than the actual construction code. So the reason why I say that is because if there's anything that's site mitigation for design criteria, let's just say like the locals say like, hey, in order to comply with this requirement, you have to have a minimum water flow for that location. And so there maybe needs to be a certain pump size or something to accommodate that fire suppression system. And maybe at that specific site, there's not enough water or there's not enough flow at the utility.
Yep.
That is more the design criteria. I don't think it really dictates what kind of material you can use, unless there is something specific in the material. But I think that's what would help address your question is it's not the code. The code, like we'll put what is required by code for the design, but there has to be a design criteria that code has to follow. So, locals can say, yes, we do require it for structures that are over 3,000 square feet, right? No more than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant and maybe 26-foot wide access, right? If you don't have any of those, or if you meet those or whatever those requirements, then you have to have a fire suppression system. That's design criteria. But when they start talking about like, hey, you have to do a 2904 or 13D or 13R, 13, that's when it starts getting to the code. But there might be some stuff that's a little kind of like on that fine line of like, you have to have a minimum pressure of this quantity, or your system can't be less than this pressure for the system. That's more design criteria in my mind. So I think hopefully that kind of addresses your question. It's just, we have to really sit down and think about what is design criteria, what is code, because that's where the 7.3 really is trying to distinguish. Like, we need to, you can't enforce something that is based on code that you've adopted on our structures that are factory built, right? But we do consider the local design criteria as part of that design itself.
Yeah, I definitely think it's kind of a razor's edge here, but I see what you're trying to say, and I think, Sam, that's what you were saying too, right? That the code itself is not you can't supersede the code. However, as long as the mitigation or whatever the alternate that's being proposed is within the construct of the code, we're saying that would be permitted through the lens of design criteria.
Yep.
But okay, thanks guys, I appreciate it.
And Wayne, if you think others will be confused by this, other local governments, then let's add a subparagraph with a 7.3.1 with that scenario that if the and we'll work on some wording and propose it, but something along the lines of if local designs standards require a higher standard than that to implement fire suppression or whatever it is, right? Or
Yeah.
mitigation.
Yeah, and it's not even, I mean, right, I'm looking at it from a fire suppression perspective because we see that fairly often, but I think it could be really anything, really, as far as topic wise. So
Right. Yeah, there's always going to be that one project that's going to be unique, right? And so yeah, we want to try to capture those. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. Back to take a step, the comments on potentially proposing and building to the later version of the code, 24 versus 21 or 27. It is for clarification. I've been involved in code development for many, many years, and probably 97% of the code proposal changes are making the code's more restrictive, but there are times when it becomes less restrictive. And so I want to make sure that we keep that in the mind of what the Division of Housing is accepting, for a builder. A couple of things come to mind. The energy code is dropping on the attic insulation from R60 down to R49 with the 24. In the 27 code, they're going to fix the flaw that happened with the A2L refrigerants, which isn't for residential, but on commercial. And there's a few others here and there. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's not just across the board. If you build to the latest published code, it's going to be all at least equal or more restrictive. For the most part, it is, but not 100%. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Tim. And if you have some locations and where we can add that language, we will do that. All right. Other state agencies. The division is responsible for all factory inspections for in-state and out-of-state factory construction. This includes electrical, plumbing, gas, construction, fire suppression, and wildfire structure hardening. The division 8.2, the division is responsible for all inspections related to the completion and installation of the unit on site. Connections to utilities is responsible for the local jurisdiction, which may defer these to other state agencies such as DORA and DFPC. And then I break it out specifically by plumbing connections. I mentioned also, and I want to go back and revisit this if you guys didn't catch this, the installation of gas piping on the service must be completed by a qualified gas piping installer. That's was in the statute, but from my understanding, I seem to recall a discussion about whether or not a qualified gas piping installer existed. Can anybody refresh me on that? Tim?
That was my question. I'm not familiar with any. Well, it's not on the state side. John, I see John's there. And at plumbing board, plumbing rules exclude gas. So a non-licensed plumber can do gas line, residential and commercial, and the same thing with inspections, at least from local jurisdictions. You don't have to have a licensed plumbing inspector do the gas line. So that was a couple of comments to get clarified. Maybe John's got his hand up. Thanks.
Yeah, John?
Yeah, statewide, there's no licensing for gas piping installer. So basically by the state laws, there's no, anybody can basically do gas piping. Of course, they have to do it per the code and install it and be inspected with a permit and all that. But some local jurisdictions do have their own certification, so they ask for, they ask for a certification. They either have their own or they ask for like ICC certifications. I think like Pikes Peak Regional, they have their actual own class that they put people through, and it's more on the HVAC side than it is on, per se, gas piping. But so yeah, there's no requirements to reference to as far as, unless you want to put in something on a certification side from like ICC or somebody like that.
So John, should I add a phrase to the end of this sentence that says something along the lines of the installation of gas piping on the service side must be completed by a qualified gas piping installer if required by the local jurisdiction?
That could be a way to cover it, because like I said, we don't, as far as like on our side of it, we don't, if somebody turns in a gas pipe permit, we go do it because we don't have to require licensing.
We'll add that because it was called out in 002, and I don't want to go to statute jail. So maybe that'll keep me out of statute jail. All right, cool.
All right, cool.
Thank you. Then I talk about the electrical installations are not related to the completion of the unit or the installation of the unit. Must be completed by a licensed electrician under a registered electrical contractor. The inspection and inspectors of these service side connections must be performed by a licensed electrical inspector. And then fire suppression system construction and installation inspections are the responsibility of the division. And 8.3, any annual certification, inspections, and testing requirements of the structure is not the responsibility of the division, but is the responsibility of the applicable state agency. There was some questions on whether or not in commercial buildings, the annual fire inspection, who was going to do that. So that will be DFPC. And then a state agency may apply as a third-party agency or participating jurisdiction for installation inspections and oversight inspections where the state agency has local government authority. And where we have recently run into this is relocatable classroom structures on school property, right? Donnie?
I was just going to add for 8.3, maybe we should add in there any annual certification, inspection, and testing requirements of the structure after its certification is not the responsibility of the division. That way that we can distinguish that it's still within our jurisdiction until we certify the structure. And then after it's certified, then it's the responsibility of the locals.
Okay, thanks, Donnie. Okay. We added this section in registered sellers. Registration will remain active if required documents are submitted to the division by the registration expiration date. And then we're going to add a section here on audit of sellers, their contracts, and their financial accounts related to taking deposits. Installers, we added business entities in rulemaking 1. Again, we added here registrations will remain active if required documents are submitted to the division by the registration expiration date. Certifications will remain active if required documents are submitted to the division by the certification expiration date. And that would be for certified installers, right? Enforcement. So we are I am the HUD state appointed authority. And so they review our installation program, our registration program, and another alternative materials audit on an annual basis. And they would like to see this language in our enforcement section, and I have to do an update to our state plan that failure to comply with manufactured housing regulations may subject the party in question to civil penalties in accordance with these federal regulations as adjusted by the Federal Civil Penalties Inflation Adjustment Act. So we're going to recommend adding that also. But that is for HUD homes specifically. Otherwise, we got another clean audit from, and this was just a recommendation from HUD. If I've never shared with the TAC, but we have always got clean audit, and they're not audits, they're reviews. We've got very clean reviews with HUD and have a very good relationship with them. And so that's a plus for us. Okay. Anybody now, the next big piece of business that we want to spend some time on is the discussion of the 2024 code set. But before we do that, is there any other discussion on the rough draft rules that we sent out? You know, I mentioned a couple of changes we're going to make here. I'm going to read through it a couple more times and see if there's any other changes we need to make as far as editorial, more language changes than content changes. But this is what we are recommending moving forward with, and we will have time to discuss. So you've got time now to ask questions. You can take this and go back and read it and send me questions that you want discussed at the next meeting. Or you can wait till the next meeting and say, hey, what about this? But I will reemphasize that we are trying to finalize this plan on how the administrative rules will look and the content changes and the fee changes in order to recommend to the State Housing Board. And then we can focus on the design criteria regions. All right. Now, next big piece of business. Let's talk about pros and cons of adopting the 2024 ICC code set. We talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. And so the question before us is, should the TAC recommend a code set change from the 21 code set, which was effective 1/1/25, to the 2024 code set effective 7/1/26? So we put together pros and cons of that, and it was in the slide deck that we sent out. There are accessibility pros and cons, and we've talked about the new statute that requires us to be on one of the two most recent accessibility changes, accessibility chapters of a code set adoption by ICC. And we have modified the IBC in this one to reflect that. So there's that one, right? And then there's energy. There's a lower ceiling insulation in the 24 code set, IECC. But that trade-off in ceiling assemblies increases prescriptive requirements in other places. Wind and snow. Wind and snow, there's changes that has pros and cons, right? Changing now to the 24 code set allows us to set the design criteria regions to the most current reference standards, which will align with local design criteria for jurisdictions that will be or have adopted the 24 code set. And we know local jurisdictions are adopting the 24 code set. The cons are there's significantly higher snow loads for certain areas of Colorado. And the snow load change is based on risk category. So it's a change of the ways that we have calculated those in the past. I'm going to go through these by different categories, and then we can jump back. And then we have a summary pro and con also. Plan approval. Manufacturers may have longer plans plans that are approved for a longer period of time That would be until adoption of the 2027, or we adopt the 30. But if we adopt 24 now, that would give a longer time for plan approval. And the regional zones will be accurate when locals go to 24. The con is we just went to 21 in January, so that would only be 18 months on that plan set, right? Or that code set. So they would have to update plans to the 24 code set after June 30th. 24 also adds some tornado factors into the code set and current wind risk design standards for areas prone to tornado and wind speeds. The con is the 24 tornado provisions for risk category 3 and 4 structures, and there are areas with Colorado that are within the tornado overlay. My house. So there's pros and cons there, right? Seismic categories will be current with the local design criteria for those who adopt the 24. The con is category changes depending on risk category of building, increased variability in design. Rain loads, this is another one. Very similar pro and con on this. Increases the variability of the loads needed by risk category, which may not be as stringent. But the con is that it decreases the variability of loads needed by risk category, which will have to be factored into the plans, right? Overall, the pros will meet locals design criteria for those that adopt the 24. Will exceed those who remain on the 21 until they adopt 24. Will not have to adopt new codes until law changes or until a code is deemed more beneficial than the 24 code set. More time to adapt to the code before any change is needed. And then the variability in design criteria may allow for less stringent requirements based on location. The cons are more stringent requirements for some design criteria, higher prescriptive energy requirements in some assemblies, and the increases of some variables in design. With that said, Donnie has some more data to kind of walk through, but I want to pause there and see if there's any questions, comments, or concerns. If you want to wait until after Donnie talks, then we can wait there too. Now, we're rolling this out with what we see as pros and cons. You may have unique pros and cons based on your perspective and your position on the tax. So we do want to hear all those also. We would like to decide at the next TAC meeting if we're going to recommend that code change, because that code change adoption drives the table and the regions for design criteria. If we're going to stay on 21, we'll go that route. If we want to recommend going to 24, that gives us a little more direction on how to develop those tables. Any thoughts? Somebody's got their hand up. Tim.
Yeah, thank you. I know we've talked about this before. I'm in full support of going to the 2024 code package in its entirety. I think it would be a benefit to all the jurisdictions across Colorado, along with the manufacturers who want to build throughout Colorado, considering how many, not all, are going to the 24, but there are a number of them. I think it would be a good move, and then you don't have to go through the process again for probably, like you said, maybe until the 2030. You could skip the 27. That's my opinion. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Donnie, you want to go through some of your stuff?
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna try to go through these as quick as I can. I know that we have a lot of stuff we got to cover still, but this table that is shown right now is actually an updated table from the previous proposed table. You'll see that the snow loads have changed and the wind loads have changed. And then we also put some footnotes and some clarification for this. Again, as I discussed in the past, this table, is going to be broken down into 5 regions. Each region is a prescriptive region. So if you built to that wind or snow load, the structure has to comply with that minimum design for that specific column. And then basically, or would be the prescriptive method. If you design to these specific loads, then anything that or any jurisdiction that this goes to that is designed to that specific region, as long as it meets or exceeds that location, then it'll be approved to be installed in that location. And then region 5 is the catch-all. So let's just say you exceed 100 pound snow load or 150 mile-an-hour wind loads, then it's going to be a region 5 site specific. That's just how you categorize it. You can possibly do, the maximum wind and snow loads for Colorado and still fit region 5. Or if you're like, I'm at 110 pounds per square foot on the snow, and 160 for the wind, it'll still fit in region 5. So it's just it's a catch-all, anything that exceeds regions 1 through 4. The thermal envelope, I put climate zone 7, and that's just for the insulation requirements. As long as you comply with the prescriptive methods of climate zone 7, you'll be fine. Or if you have any other alternatives, so if you do like a performance-based or ERI method, as long as it complies with the climate zone 7 requirements for the thermal envelope, and it passes those scores for climate zone 7, then it will be the prescriptive method of the thermal envelope requirements. Let's see, wildfire mitigation. Again, we propose doing a minimum class 1. You'll see there's a footnote D there, and I believe that's on the next slides with all the footnotes, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then fire suppression if required by the locals. So if the locals require fire suppression systems, then we will enforce it on our end, but to our adopted codes. But this kind of relates to that conversation with Wayne earlier, is what is going to be the design criteria and what factors are going to take or what factors are going to play in that design. And we got to figure out what those design criteria that the locals may have put in place. There might be some restrictions on certain types of units because maybe the site itself doesn't have enough water flow, and you're going to have to do a cistern or some other type of reserved water to supply enough water for that fire suppression system to operate as long as it needs to. So we'll get into that a little bit more. And then also what I did is I separated these into 2 sections. The top, thermal, wildfire, and fire suppression, that's for all structures. And then the bottom portion there is specific to IRC because radon is not a requirement in the IBC, and then ADU separation is not a requirement in the IBC. So I separated those 2 areas. So down below for the IRC only, radon mitigation, IRC Appendix AF with a footnote, and then ADU fire separation, IRC 302.1 with a footnote F. Any questions on this?
Dean's got his hand up, Donnie.
Yeah, thanks for that, Donnie. Just quick question of clarification. I know we've been kind of having this conversation for the last several months now, but as an example, if I had a project, let's say in Kit Carson out on the Eastern Plains that has a 35-pound snow load, but 145-pound wind load, would I then, as a design criteria, if I wanted to use the regions, I would go to region 4 and design for 100 pound snow load in order to design for up to 150-mile-an-hour wind load? The wind load in that particular example being the critical factor.
So I think so they share region numbers, right? But the columns work independent of one another. So if you had a 35-pound snow load and you're like, increasing it by 4 or 5 pounds is not that big of a deal, I'll just do region 1 snow load, and then risk or the wind risk category 2, 150-mile-an-hour wind. So it'd be region 1 snow, region 4 wind.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that. That's what my previous understanding was, but then when I saw this chart, I thought maybe that might have changed because of where the bold line was, but I get it. Thank you.
Yeah, again, and thanks for bringing that up. Maybe that's something we could add into maybe a little descriptive thing above the table that regions are shared, but the columns are independent of one another. So you can pick and choose what region wind, what region snow. Okay. Any other questions? Sorry,
yeah.
Sam,
I was just going to recommend that you consider adding the radon provisions to IBC structures built to R2 occupancies. That's something we did up here for quite some time, and it just for us it just makes sense because those are long-term or full-time occupants living as they would in a single-family residence. Their exposure to radon is the same risk.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. I guess we'll find out some more information based on that survey of any other jurisdictions that might be doing that. But as of right now, the only reason why we put it in the IRC is because the IRC is the only one that mentions radon mitigation in their appendixes. So we can take a look at it.
Yeah, we just did it as an amendment because just based on the risk factor, it's why is your risk higher in a single family home than in the garden level of an apartment building?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Andre, thanks, Don, for that. We'll take a look.
Yeah, Don, I just wanted to follow up so I make sure I understand what you're saying with that. The amendment that you guys have, did you do that on a unit by unit basis looking at multifamily? Because obviously with R2s, you can have a lot of shared spaces like in basements for mechanical, things like that. So I was just curious how you guys took that approach.
Yeah, it's just something that's required when there's residential units on the grade level.
Okay.
But the same thing is, we did 2 modular apartment buildings 2 years ago in Breckenridge, and we still put radon mitigation system in just because it was a crawl space and there's units exposed right above that crawl space, and we just don't. The problem is it's very affordable to put the system in. It doesn't cost you hardly anything. You have to put a vapor barrier in that crawl space, run to the slab anyway. So really, you're just stuffing the pipe in and running a passive system and having the ability to put a fan on the system if needed. Whereas if you say and it's really, we're trying to cover the builders too and the developers, because you develop a condo building and the first guy that comes in and buys a garden level unit does a radon test and it comes back hot. Now you're drilling holes in slabs and trying to figure out how you're going to run the system and not, destroy the unit. The other problem is like up here, it's a lot of in-floor heat. So just drilling a hole in a slab is not fun because you got to miss all your tubing. But we just saw it as a very inexpensive way to protect the public health. Your health risks are still the same. You're living full time in a condo building or an apartment building, or you're living full time in a single family home. Your health exposure and health risk is still the same. We just saw it as a dramatic flaw in the IBC code where they ignore that. And it was something we took on as a local jurisdiction to amend that, make it right. And the local builders on board with it because the affordability to run that is, a couple $100. Your plumber's adding pipe in. It's easy for them to stuff something into the slab and run it out through the building. You don't really hear any complaints about it. But man, when a developer gets dinged with having high radon in a brand new building, they like to squawk, why didn't you make me do that? So just throwing out that other food for thought.
Thanks, Tom. All right, thank you. Any other questions on that or on the table? No? Okay, we can go to the next one. All right, so the footnotes that are on the table, this is what they come out to be. So when the snow load is above 65 PSF, the minimum uniformly distributive live loads for exterior balconies, decks, and fire escapes shall be as required for roof snow loads. This is something that was already in our previous table. And this is only for structures that are produced at the manufacturer with the balconies, decks, or fire escapes at the factory. So some manufacturers, they do like a one box unit, and they kind of recess the dwelling space inward and then use that same flooring system on the entrance deck. And so in those cases, this is where it would apply. If the deck is being built on site as open construction, then you would just comply with the local's requirements for that deck system or anything that's accessory to that unit. You would comply with the local requirements. Okay. Structures that need to be designed for risk category 3 and 4 or exposures other than C or in tornado regions indicated in ASCE 7-22 wind areas must use the ASCE hazard tool or equivalent software specific wind speeds. And the reason for this is because as of right now, we don't have a definitive way of being able to convert the values that we put into the table into risk category 3 and 4. And I got to check. I actually just seen in our current rules for jurisdictions that do not have building departments, we do have a conversion there for those jurisdictions. But I might have to discuss a little bit further with the engineers, or if you guys have anybody that you recommend that I can talk to about those conversions. But it's in Rule 2. I can't remember which. I think it's 2.10 maybe. But there are some conversions there for risk category 3 and 4 from a 2. But as of right now, I don't want to put something on the table for risk category 3 and 4 yet until we get some more background on that and see what we can do with that. Okay. But the ASCE hazard tool or equivalent software would be sufficient for meeting that specific locations area. And the other reason why it makes sense why you can't do it is because when they take the averages of wind speeds at different locations, each location is going to have a different average. So you can't just do a one-to-one comparison and say like, all right, well, if this whole area, if this entire jurisdiction was 120 mile-an-hour winds, then the entire, no matter where I put this structure, I can just do an easy conversion from 120 to whatever the risk category 3 is. But let's say it's like 130, right? It's not the same because one area's average might be different than another. So that's another reason why we put this footnote there. All right. And then for C, and this is for the thermal envelope requirements, may be exempt from climate zone 7 thermal envelope requirements if the structure will be installed in a jurisdiction in climate zone 4. So we do have 4 jurisdictions that are climate zone 4 underneath the 24 IECC. So if you're doing a site-specific unit, or it would have to be site-specific because every other jurisdiction is going to be a 5 or higher. So if you're doing a unit that's specific to those 4 jurisdictions southeast of Colorado, then you can do a climate zone 4. Okay. Justin has his hand raised.
Justin.
There we go. Yeah, I just had a thought on that when we were talking about the wind speeds and being averaged and whatnot. And starting in the 2021 IBC, and it's also going to be in the 2024, you're allowed to factor your wind pressures on the elevation, which Colorado has large elevations, which correlates into a very substantial reduction in wind pressures. That would also be hard to encompass in your table, because I mean, you would have to know the elevation at each location. And I know I automatically take that in all of my calcs now, that reduction based on sea level elevation. If I know the address of a building, I will use the elevation. And I know some other engineers that are doing that by default too. So it's more prevalent. It's going to be a default thing because again, we're talking maybe a 15% decrease in your wind pressures just due to your above sea level elevation.
Is this what you're talking about earlier in the TAC about the K factor? And
Yeah, it's that KE factor is the new factor, which is the E stands for elevation. But yeah, it's not a linear thing either. It's an exponential equation.
yeah, and so you're talking about converting from risk category to risk category?
No, this would not be within risk category. This would occur in all risk categories. It's across the board reduction, regardless of category. It's solely based on your elevation above sea level because as you go up, your wind density decreases. So 100-mile-per-hour wind blowing at sea level is going to have more pressure behind it than 100-mile-per-hour blowing 4,000 feet above sea level because the density's not there.
So this is just for a reduction though, right?
This is, yeah, but again, it's a substantial reduction that every engineer is going to use in Colorado. So I don't know how you're going to incorporate. I think if you're using this table, that's going to be another very conservative hit that you're going to take on these wind speeds because you won't be using your elevation factors.
And the K factor is reduces for the reduction, right? So if you start a K factor or KE factor of 1.
Yeah, you can always default to 1, but again, that default's going to be a huge hit to your building. It's going to be at least a 15% hit.
So I guess yeah. So let's go into a little bit more detail when we have our one-on-one and see what we can do. And then anybody else that's on the TAC has any input on that, can you provide that feedback? Because I'm thinking that if we set them, because if you're designing these to risk category 2, let's say a KE factor of 1, and this goes into a jurisdiction that you're trying to get a reduction, then you're probably just going to have to do a site specific, right? So maybe that's
right,
something.
and I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. I don't know that economically that regions 1 through 4 are going to be good for wind design, and I don't know who's going to use these defaults. I would think that everybody would go site specific if they're going to be taking hit after hit by making these conservative assumptions.
Yeah, it might be based on the I think, at least in my head, I think it's going to be based on the type of structure. I think most structures probably wouldn't have that big of effect unless you're starting to do like big multifamily buildings or large commercial projects where that K factor is really going to have a larger effect on that structure, especially when you go to risk category 3 and 4, right?
Well, it would certainly
again,
help everybody on roof to wall connections because components and cladding pressures from 2018 to 2021 went up significantly. And if you take that without reducing the pressure due to your elevation, again, you're taking hit number 1 for the new code, hit number 2 for not taking your elevation. There's other factors too, but
okay. Well, let's make a note of that, and then let's take a deep dive into that and see what how that's going to change this table.
Okay.
Dean, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. I agree completely with everything that was just said, but I always have to remind myself, and I think everybody on this call would be, it's a good exercise to remember, like the purpose of this regional design criteria for a factory is to allow a factory to build product that can fit anywhere that meets these criteria. So I've mentioned this, Donnie, to you before. I don't think any project that's going to be a larger scale project, a walk-up apartment building or anything like that, will ever actually use the design criteria, because those are always, or the regional design criteria, because those are always going to be site-specific projects, and it's going to serve the design team and the manufacturer and the client best to just design those large complex buildings to their local requirements. But if I'm a factory and I want to build at spec, you know, a dozen single family homes that meet a 60-pound snow load, which puts me in the chart is off now, so I can't I haven't memorized it yet. So whatever zone 60 pound falls in, and whatever zone a 130-pound exposure C wind falls in, and so on and so forth, I can go ahead and build a dozen homes meeting that criteria, and those homes can go in any location in the state that meet up to that design criteria. So that's my understanding of the real purpose of going through this exercise. It's going to be for the benefit of factories to be able to maybe not mass produce, because there'd be some risk of that, but you know, stock certain plans that they know can go into certain locations. And when we look at it through that lens, this makes a lot more sense. Because yeah, I mean, to Justin's point, I mean, otherwise I'm just going to design to the actual local criteria for a large complex project, because it doesn't benefit me at all to over design really in any category. And similarly, it's hard to imagine any factory, you know, prefabricating multifamily modular units in hopes that they might actually sell that type of product in a specific location, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Dean. I was alluding to that, and I think you did a better explanation than I did. But yeah, again, you know, if the concern is to be able to reduce or do a reduction on a design load, then that's where the Region 5 comes into play, right? Like, you know, I don't really want to design to that prescriptive method. I want to design to this site-specific information, and then so you have that ability still through Region 5, and so you can do a reduction based on that, right? And so it fit under Region 5. But if you say, hey, I want to build a mass production, or I want to build like 10 of these units off of one plan, then you just do the prescriptive method. But maybe we should make it clear that you do, there is no reduction for wind pressures on there, just so that we don't have them putting a reduction up front and then getting that approved that way. Okay. But yeah, let's still talk about that more. A little bit more on that. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Here we go. I was thinking we're on the same thing here. All right. So D for wildfire. I think this one's for the wildfire mitigation. May be exempt if the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code map or locally amended map approved by the Colorado Resiliency Code Board classifies location where the structure will be installed with no hazard. So this is for the minimum class 1 hazard structure. If you went with the class 1, you know that it will fit in all class 1 and any location that doesn't have a specific hazard. But let's say you're like, you know, I don't want to put in that the extra materials for a class 1. You can do, you know, a site-specific, you know, unit that fits in a area that has no hazard classification. But if you were trying to do this in a mass production model, doing it at a minimum class 1, you know that it will fit in a class 1 or in areas that have no hazard. Dean?
Yeah, this particular footnote, I had a question of clarity on this, because right now we're dealing with this. Jefferson County is approving their own wildfire, like every jurisdiction I think has to by some drop dead date. So now we have a situation where the Colorado resiliency code map and Jefferson County's code map don't actually agree in certain specific locations. And so the way this is written, as long as my site is classified as a no hazard location for either map, or is there a more restrictive case in this the way it's written right now, it's saying either or, right? So
Yes.
if it is hazard in the local map, but the state map, it says no hazard, then I can say no hazard, I'm out. Is that how that's intended?
So Dan,
Yes.
the kicker on this one is that Jeffco has to get it approved by the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board as a locally amended map. Once they get it approved there, that changes there won't be a change to the overall state map. It'll be kind of like an addendum map, right? So then you will want to build to the Jeffco approved map or the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board approved map for Jeffco. So Jeffco can propose a map and ask you to build to it, but right now I'm not sure how that's working because they have to the Wildfire Resiliency Code only refers to the state map or those maps that have been approved by the amended maps that have been approved by the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board.
Gotcha. So I can say it's not working well. So
Oh, I know. I
it's
know.
a mess, and there's a lot of like very heated debate over the local level topic right now, because if a local wants to make it more restrictive, people are looking around like, why are we making it more restrictive than the state has already outlined? And so that's another topic for another group, but it's going to be a messy business, no question.
Yeah, the only way they can take it down in restrictiveness is by ground truthing and presenting that ground truthing data to the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board for approval.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they can't always go more restrictive. So is Jeffco looking at more restrictive or?
They basically just blanketed everything west of the hogback, and it's like, well, hang on, the state map doesn't actually do that. It's far more granular.
Right, and that's why Larimer County just is going to do everything outside of city jurisdictions where they have authority. Everything in unincorporated Larimer County will be class 2, regardless of the state wildfire map.
Yeah. And so I guess, Dean, that second part of that footnote D, I think that addresses what you're asking. But if we need to rewrite it, let us know. But like I said, it says it may be exempt if the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code map, shows it, or if locally amended map approved by the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code Board. Right. So it gives those two there, but it's not locals specific. It's going to be what was approved by the Resiliency Code Board.
Yep. So it might just be the distinction of the word and versus or.
Well, if we put and, to me, I think that would be.
It would create either of those two scenarios having to be,
yeah,
no hazard.
We're going to follow the language shortly on. Like you said, it's still in discussion and still being figured out at the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board. If they come up with better language, we'll use that in our final rulemaking.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Donnie, keep rocking.
All right. Anything else on that one before I move forward? No. Okay. All right. Structures may be designed. So this is for the radon mitigation part. So on the table, it's to prep those units for radon mitigation, but there's a few ways that you can do that. One is you can run that mitigation through the structure, or you can run it through the maybe through a rim board or something through the to the exterior and run it on the exterior of the structure. But it just needs to be prepped. So if you run a pipe through there, show it on your plans through the unit. Or if it's run through the exterior, making sure that you have details of how that's penetrating the structure itself or how it can penetrate the structure, and then how it needs to be sealed to prevent any pests from entering or weathering from the exterior. Okay. And then F is going to be the fire suppression, or not fire suppression. This is going to be the fire separation for ADU requirements. So it may be exempt if the locals having jurisdictions does not require fire separation for accessory dwelling units. Again, This is for those jurisdictions that, they have written into their rules or their ordinances that they consider these structures on the same lot, although it's specific to IBC. I guess the requirement itself, they might see it being the same type of thing for residential. I know there are jurisdictions that are like that, and that's why we wanted to put this in there, that they don't consider them two separate structures in the sense of needing to, like a duplex. They wouldn't require power separation between the two. So we put that footnote in there. Okay. All right, so this is a little further on the data that I collected, and this is more of a comparison. The top two tables there, that's what we had originally, except this is for the version 2 table that I presented to you today. You'll see, I think the original one went from like 51% to 62% for region 1. And then there's some slight increases there on the other regions. But you'll see that on the top left table there, the way that the data fits using the version 2 table, 62% fit in region 1, 26 in region 2, 6 and 3, 4 and 4, and 2% in region 5. And just remember, that's just the data points that were on that SEAC document and how it correlates with the table itself. And then on the top right corner, that table shows that based on county coverage, the amount of data points that were within the counties, 88% of those data points, or 88% of the counties in Colorado that have a region 1 data point. That's the amount of coverage there for region 1. So if you look at Colorado as a whole, 88% of Colorado has a region 1. And then region 2, 31% has a region 2, 14% region 4, or region 3, 9% region 4, and then 5% region 5. So basically, it's that layered cake approach. If you break Colorado down to layers or regions, right? Each layer is one region. 88% of the coverage for region 1 would be on that first layer, 31% on the second layer, 14, and it just goes, it decreases the higher you go and the more restricted requirements, but that's just how that's broken down. Now, if we do a comparison on the ASCE data, so I took all the SEAC pinpoints and I looked up all of the ASCE 22 data points. 34%, this is for commercial, 34% fit within region 1, 26 in region 2, 16 in 3, 4 and 4, and 20 in region 5. So it, at least if you look at in the prescriptive method of the table, it's higher in the lower regions, and then it decreases in the higher region, except for region 5. There's just going to be a lot more site-specific regions when you're designing to region 5, because they're going to exceed the regions 4 criteria. And that's just because when you look at the data itself, there's some places that increase by like 220% on the snow load, and that's just for risk category 2. I didn't pull up any data points for risk category 3 and 4, but just for risk category 2, there's going to be a lot more site-specific, if not region 5 specific structures on the commercial side for those higher regions. And then also by county, you can, again, just based on the data points, 66% of Colorado is going to fall under region 1, 38 for region 2, 27 for region 3, 8% for region 4, and then 25% for region 5. And that's just because of the amount of snow loads, or the amount of loading that is increased in the ASCE 22. Now there is reductions there. This is just the value that you're going to use for that specific area. So let's just say that that specific area was 220 pound snow load. You still have the ability to do the reduction, but that 220 pound snow load is that value that you're using to in that equation for the reduction. All right. Is there any questions on that? No. Okay, go to the next. All right, so this is for the residential part of things. So again, the tables on the top left and right, they're the same information as the previous table, but this is just a comparison for the residential snow loads. So there is a reduction in the ASC 722 for IRC structures, and it already gives you that allowable stress design load for the snow loads for those specific snow loads. But 56% of the data fits in region 1, 21% in 2, 8 and 3, 7 and 4, and then 8 and 5. So you can see, at least on the residential side of things, there's not as much in region 5. So you can there's quite a large percentage that you can do the prescriptive method, and then only about 8% would need a region 5 design criteria, or you can do a site specific and be region 5 as well. So that, I guess, that percentage could increase if you wanted to do that. But if you just did prescriptive methods, this is how it lays out. And then on the bottom right, you can see Colorado wise that 89% of Colorado will have a region 1, 31 for 2, 16 for 3, 9 for 4, and then 16 for 5. So basically, again, if you look at Colorado as a whole, 89% of Colorado has a region 1. 31% will be region 2, or have a region 2, 16 for portions of Colorado that have 3, and so on and so forth. Okay. So again, just remember, try to picture it as a layered cake kind of thing. If you want to do region 1 of all the areas that have in Colorado that have a region 1, 89% of Colorado will have a region 1 within that layer. Okay. And then just keep going up in layers. Does that make sense to everybody? Hopefully. Raise your hand if you don't, if you're confused, but we can move to the next slide if we're good.
Yeah, Donnie, we got to rock through this stuff.
Okay.
I've got 10 minutes left.
Okay. All right. So same tables as last time, but the bottom two tables, this is based on a report that I ran in our system for commercial and residential plan reviews. And so this specific slide is going to show the tables for commercial. You'll see that overall, actually on the bottom left is going to be the overall report. 63% of the structures submitted to Colorado fit within region 1, 21 in 2, 7 for 3, 5 for 4, and 5 for 5. So it kind of aligns with the data above, and then also the other data tables on the previous slides. But when it comes to commercial specific plan submittals, 77% fit within region 1, 11 and 2, 4 and 3, 1% and 4, and 8% and 5. So you can see that just based on the past 2 years production, this is how it aligns with the way the regions are laid out. All right, production wise from the industry. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is specific to commercial, same thing. The top two tables are the same as the previous slides. And then the bottom left here is just the overall report of all the structures. But on the bottom right, this is going to be specific to IRC structures that were submitted to Colorado. You'll see that 49% fit within region 1, 31% in region 2, 9 for 3, 10 for 4, and 2% in region 5. So residential wise, there's not a lot of region 5, or you wouldn't need a lot of site specific if you follow the table. Majority of the production will fit in regions 1 and 2. And then just at least from the past 2 years, we do have regions 3 and 4 that have close to 10% of the units that go to those locations. But the majority of all the residential structures go into regions 1 and 2. So you can say 70, 80% of the state's production goes into regions 1 and 2. All right. And I think that's it.
All right. So we're down. We have a slide in here on fire suppression. There's some easy decision items, and then there's some hard decision items. I think we're going to defer this discussion in the benefit based on the time. So we'll bring this back Donnie, is there anything else you wanted to say on this slide?
No, we can get into more details on this on the next one, but please review this slide for those items.
So some homework, look at this slide, also look at the winter design temps slide here. And then I want to give Shums Coda a few minutes to give us an update on the survey.
Thank you, Sam. I guess I'll just jump in very quickly and say thank you very much to all the folks that have been filling that out and pressing that issue with folks. We're getting good data back. I'd love to turn it over to Stephanie, who's been monitoring the numbers on our admin team.
You muted, Steph.
Sorry about that. Thank you. We've been continuing to send the survey out weekly, and starting this week for the last couple weeks of the survey data gathering period, we're going to start sending it out 2 or 3 times a week to everybody who has not filled it out so far. We have 3 staff members cold calling, encouraging people to take the survey or filling it out with them over the phone to get the answers back. I'd say we've probably compiled half-ish of the jurisdiction's data and hoping for more between now and the end of the data gathering period. But it's going well, and we are pleased with the results of how many people are filling the survey out.
Thanks, Steph. Andre, anything else? Thank you.
No, not at this point. Thank you very much.
So Heather, you want to go through the contractor education slides?
I think just very quickly, we had a pretty good response rate. So thanks for those of you who completed it and shared it with others to complete. I think the slides are fairly self-explanatory if folks want to take a look at their leisure, just in the interest of time. And of course, feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
So these are the slides that kind of summarize what we found so far from the survey, and I'll echo Heather in thanking you guys for completing the survey. We'll bring this back and kind of summarize maybe with an outline and of what we are thinking with respect to contractor education. Our next steps on this is that we're going to decide if we're going to partner for delivery in-house or contract out with that. So we kind of need content and what our expectations are. And we have talked to a lot of different providers so far, not a lot, but we've talked to several different providers that make sense on have learning management systems in-house in order to possibly do that as an on-demand system, or we take a look at live training. And we get down to rulemaking to schedule, just our friendly reminder. March 11th is when we are expecting to send the final rules to the TAC and interested parties, and then March 18th meeting finalize those proposed rules. And then we file that notice on March 31st for rulemaking, and then we have the public hearing on May 5th, and then it's just publication after that. Permanent rules in effect June 30th. Next meeting, June 7th. We should have some preliminary results from Shums Coda. We want to review and finalize the edits to the red lines for everything else, like we've mentioned here. We'll get those draft red lines out the Friday before the next meeting for sure. So you've got a couple of days to look at them. And then the other thing that we want to finalize that's not on this slide is the move to ICC 2024 code set, right? That's what we need to really decide at the next meeting too. And since I have 2 minutes left, this is the rest of our meetings. Happy holidays. We do appreciate all your time. I would like to hear, if there is any other thoughts. Tim shared his thoughts with moving to the 2024 code set. Are there any other general thoughts on moving to the 2024 code set that we can help address and finalize that at the next meeting? Robbie's got a thumbs up. Thanks, Robbie. Yeah, you can do it thumbs up. You can write a comment, or you can email me after the meeting if you would like to. But again, that 24 code set decision drives a lot of what we are doing. Don, thank you for the thumbs up. Dean, thumbs up.
Thanks all. Thumbs up.
Thank you. Tracy, we'll work with you, Tracy.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep, absolutely. We have tried to consider tiny homes into that decision, and if we need to have some further discussions with the tiny home folks, then we are willing to, we want to hear from you. Thank you for being here.
It's perspective.
I'll send you an
Energy-wise,
email.
it's
Robbie, Tracy, we'll set up a meeting. Robbie, did you have a comment?
yeah. I was just trying to relay some fears because the prescriptive requirements are less than the 2021. So
Okay, that's good news. Thank you. All right, does anybody else have anything for the group? Thank you so much, folks. Have a great holiday season, and we will talk to you again after the first of the year.
Happy holidays, everyone. Take
Happy
care.
holidays.
happy holidays.
Bye-bye.